What's up, F1 fans? Welcome to another edition of the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast. This is episode number 128. Today we're going to be recapping the first race of the 2022 F1 season. That is, of course, the Bahrain Grand Prix. As always, I'm your host, Chris Cato. So glad you could join us along for this race recap and what was a really solid way to kick off the 2022 season. And of course, to break it all down, happy to have another full house here on tap tonight. Tyler McDonald and Shaker Barty, the fellow backmarkers in the house. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you guys doing?
Doing phenomenal. What a great start to the 2022 season. Got to see the new cars on track in a race setting for the first time, and I think they delivered on track very well.
Yeah, phenomenal weekend in the end, to be honest. I was not expecting it to be that close for, wheel-to-wheel racing that we got. And I know it's going to be very track dependent throughout the season, so we might not see it. But yeah, for the first race of the season in Bahrain, not bad.
Not at all. And it probably wasn't a 10 out of 10 in terms of rating a race, but it was certainly up there. And of course, the late drama kind of made it a little more interesting with, of course, the safety car coming out again, which we're all going to get to in this episode. Just a couple of things off the top before we get into the Bahrain Grand Prix. Of course, a thank you to our podcast sponsor for another season, the GPBox.com, the world's largest motorsport marketplace website. They got a lot of really cool F1 fan merchandise, memorabilia, even some used car parts that you might be lucky to get some hands on. So go to the description box down below, either on YouTube or the podcast player that you're listening on, and you'll find some exclusive discount codes in the description below. Also, just a quick kind of preliminary announcement for our channel. We had some great response onto our Backmarkers F1 Show live stream last weekend for Bahrain qualifying. So we will be going live once more again this Saturday for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix qualifying, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, local start, which is perfect for us here in Ottawa, Canada. So we decided we'll go live again, and we hope to have a lot of you along with us to join for that fun. It's really a great time to have us three, hopefully, on the stream, and then, of course, all the fans listening from around the world. So we'll get that scheduled, and you'll find it on the homepage of our channel. And important, guys, even if you are subscribed to the channel, just make sure you turn on the notifications bell that's right beside our subscribe button, and that way you will get YouTube notifications every time a new video from us drops, so you never have to rely on the YouTube algorithm or go searching for our videos. So that's it for the housekeeping notes, and we'll dive right into the recap of the Bahrain Grand Prix. And actually, I forgot to show this to you guys in our preseason preview, but perfect timing to bring it on here today. I actually got a little bit lucky after the Christmas holidays, because if you guys remember, F1 had a couple of season giveaways at the end of December for Christmas, and I never win these things, but I submit them anyways, because hey, why not, right? In order to win the lottery, you got to play the lottery, and of course, I didn't win. And then out of nowhere, in mid-January, I get a random email saying there was a redraw, and that I actually won. And I did end up winning a little Charles Leclerc mini replica helmet. So thank you very much to the folks at F1 Authentics. It is very, very nice. It's actually nicer than my Seb Vettel one, but I thought today was the perfect day to bring it on and show it to the world, show it to you guys as well, because of course, Mr. Charles Leclerc, third career race victory, an absolute dominant performance all weekend long at the Bahrain Grand Prix. Tyler, I'm going to send it to you for this one. What did you think of Leclerc's opening race victory in Bahrain, and a little bit of a statement made for 2022?
Yeah, congrats to you and Charles on your victories. Very cool helmet that you got there from F1 Authentic. So congrats, Chris. That's a pretty sweet prize that you got. But no, Charles was dominant and I'm going to say dominant because really the car was, if you compare it to the Red Bull with their reliability issues. I mean, the Ferrari didn't have any issues throughout the whole weekend, really, other than Charles Leclerc having a minor spin in FP2. That's been their only drama throughout the weekend. So I am going to say a dominant performance by Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. And it was really good to see Ferrari back to its usual self. That's where we want to see Ferrari up at the front, fighting for race wins and fighting for Constructors' Championships. And I think that they're going to be a favorite. As I mentioned at the beginning of the season, in our season preview, I had Charles Leclerc as our Drivers' World Champion and Ferrari as our Constructors' World Champion. And if the season were to end on race one, well, I'd be a bang-on winner on that one. But no, phenomenal weekend for Charles. And I really thought he showed a lot of good composure kept a very good level head because, he even mentioned to his team a few times during that race, especially at the start where he mentioned, yeah, my pace is looking great, but remember, I'm on new soft tires. Max is on used soft tires, and to not get too excited over the cap that he was pulling on Max early on in the race. But Ferrari had the right to be excited because their pace was just that much better than Red Bull throughout the entire race. Almost got caught on a few pit stops. Red Bull were very smart with their pit stop timing and trying to use the undercut well, but well done by Charles to keep position. And I thought that battle between Max and Charles, and we'll get into that in a little bit, Chris, but just a phenomenal battle between two world-class drivers.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc, phenomenal race in general. He did really well. Outperformed, I say outperformed, but he looked really good even in qualifying and everything. But yeah, just, we saw some of that racing in Austria a couple of years ago between Max and Charles, and it was really good to see that again. And very tight wheel-to-wheel racing from both of them. But yeah, I was very impressed with Ferrari all weekend, and it seemed like they really had the entire team set up done as well. They were really fast on the straights, good around the corners as well. And I was really surprised to hear Sainz's team radio at the end that he wasn't happy with his performance. Pulling out a P2 at the end with Red Bull's dropping out. It was very good, opening weekend for Ferrari and Sainz in general, and yeah.
I think you're starting to see a little bit of that championship mentality from Sainz. Even like you said, Shaker, second place is a terrific result, especially for the first race of the year. But he knows that he was a little bit of a ways away from Charles Leclerc this weekend. But I do believe Sainz is going to improve his game as the races go on, and it should get a lot closer, like it was in qualifying. He had a very good qualifying session, so we'll give him the credit there. And yeah, just before we get into the on-track battles that Charles Leclerc had, I was trying to figure out what was the key to Ferrari's success. I mean, I know they've had plenty of time to work on these 2022 rule sets, but I mean, what was the thing that really helped them get back to the number one position? And today I finally saw it on Twitter, the answer to that. They got visited by the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Mr. Zlatan Ibrahimovic. The inspiration why I'm wearing this jersey right now. So Ferrari number one in the constructor standings, AC Milan number one in Serie A, on the way to the Scudetto. Maybe Ferrari's on the way to their own championship as well. But that little championship mentality, I guess, rubbing off on Ferrari in the early stages of the season. So that was kind of a cool collaboration to see. I think they're dropping the full video later on in this week. But let's get into that.
You must be in heaven, Chris.
Sorry?
You must be in heaven then. You got your Zlatan jersey on. You should turn around and show us to the viewers that are watching on YouTube. Wonderful jersey you have on.
It's hard for me to turn around here. I am on a bar stool, but I got so many things in front of me. But yeah, it's the number 21 jersey from his first season when he returned back a couple of years ago. So yeah, hopefully they'll pull through and win the title. It'll be pretty special for him at 40 years old. But anyways, that's different sport. Maybe save that for another day on the podcast. So getting into really what was the phenomenal action on the track, and we got plenty of excellent championship rivalries last season, right, with Hamilton and Verstappen, but for whatever reason, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this later, I think that this one might end up being a little bit more better than Lewis and Max last season, but yeah, so this was the battle between Verstappen and Leclerc on lap 17. Of course, Verstappen was catching fairly, at a good rate of knots, and then eventually it kind of led to a 2 to 3 lap scrap between the two. But I'll let it play, Tyler, and you can kind of give me your thoughts as to what you were thinking when you were watching this unfold. Very aggressive from the two of them, but very good driving.
Oh, I thought they were going to crash, to be honest. There was zero chance where I didn't think these two would make a collision, but really, really smart driving by Leclerc. And if anyone caught his post-race interview, you notice that he actually let off, and he mentioned this, that he braked earlier so that he would get the DRS going into this second DRS detection zone so that he could get past Verstappen. And I thought that was a very clever driving from Charles to, on the spot, realize where the DRS detection zone was, and on multiple occasions, brake early to let Max right on that line, as he saw it go by quickly, get the DRS and come back the other way and have DRS on the second straight like this and go up the inside once more and pass Max Verstappen. A phenomenal battle between the two and really, really smart driving by Charles. I think he was a smarter driver during the whole race. And it really showed during that amazing battle between these two fantastic drivers. And you can see right here, oh, sorry, Chris. He breaks just a tad early, and that line that they crossed right there, it's also the pit exit line, but it's as well the DRS detection line. And he just broke that second earlier, half second earlier, quarter second earlier, whatever it was, to get his front wing behind Max, so he would get DRS into the second detection zone.
I think, sorry, one comment I want to make is, if you want to keep playing, is he does really good on defending the second corner as well, so Max doesn't get the third DRS zone. That cover off is really well done.
Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly show before the other angle. I remember watching this live, I was like, geez, Max really, really braked late and hard into this first corner. You can really see it here, just the amount of force entering into the corners. But like you said, Tyler, that was very smart strategy from McLaren. Yeah, my dad and I were commenting while we were watching the same thing after the first time that he, wasn't able to get the lead. We're like, why didn't he try to get it into turn 4 instead of sending it into turn 1? I thought that Max would be a little bit smarter after he saw what the result was, during the first overtake after he got past into turn 1. So I was a little bit surprised that he didn't try a different kind of strategy there, because I think turn 4 was actually a much better place to try the overtake. But really, the amazing angle of this is from Charles's visor cam, which so glad that one of the Ferrari drivers, especially now being a top team, has the visor cam, because now we actually get to see... That's a little bit loud. Now we actually get to see battles for leads from the view of the driver, and you can see just how much he's looking around in his mirrors for where Max is.
Yeah, it's just such a cool view, and we don't get to see this as a normal viewer for the most part. We don't get to drive these cars and be the lucky 20 drivers in the world, 20 people in the world that get to drive these phenomenal cars. And this is as close as most of us will ever get to being inside an F1 car, and it's phenomenal to see where he's looking at all times, and just the kind of ideas that they're going through Leclerc's head, and how quick he has to react on every single decision, because Max is attacking, of course, very aggressively, especially down the straight. I mean, look, 1, 2, 3, and I think there's another check here just before the braking zone that he checks his mirrors to see where Max is. So really, really cool, and I'm glad they brought this into the broadcast.
Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly make the comment. I don't know if, maybe I'll go full screen here. I believe this little bottom bar here, the red, is his energy deployment. And you can really just see how low it is at the start of the lap. And I think Charles was actually talking about this in the media pen, that he was using the battery so hard to defend for Max that he didn't have really much left. And then you can see Max, of course, coming on the right, blew by him pretty easily. But as you mentioned, Tyler, earlier, you can see just how early Leclerc brakes in comparison to Max Verstappen there going into turn 1. And so, yeah, like you were saying before, very smart driving from him. And of course, this I thought was a really cool moment between the two. They've obviously had plenty of their run-ins, not just in F1, but in karting as well. But it was cool that even Max, after the disappointment of the retirement, both of them were, in good spirits and had some pretty good banter for two guys who just had some pretty intense racing.
Ce petit avantage qu'on a. Hard luck.
It was good.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was big, huh?
Yeah, mate, I was struggling so much with the state of charge.
Yeah.
Charge the battery. You were coming
see,
like a
Because
plane.
you had to, of course, defend
Yeah,
already.
yeah. But I couldn't use it, so you were coming back from so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, what happened?
I don't know. Suddenly the engine just completely turned off. Like I was having cuts and switched off, and I had a steering problem. So it was not hydraulic, but it was not smooth anymore. It's like stuck. So in the high speed corners, I could barely steer. That's why in my restart I could not follow because my steering wheel was stuck. I couldn't turn left.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot of issues.
Ce petit avantage qu'on a.
That's the best post-race analysis ever.
Love that. That was great.
That's and I'm surprised that he did that like in the media pen with all the mics there, but he was good into not giving Leclerc too much info, but also giving a lot of info at the same time.
But I don't think he actually gave away anything about what like actually happened to the car. He's like, it's the engine, and they don't know what it is. And I wanted to comment on that because obviously Gasly had the engine go off. So is this a Red Bull issue that we're experiencing? I know Yuki ended up finishing in P8 or P9, maybe even a little bit higher, but it seemed like all, 3 out of 4 Red Bulls all experienced an engine issue, and with obviously Gasly having the worst of it. My lights flickered. Not really. That's twice, guys. 2 podcasts in a row. Something weird.
They're cutting you off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Yuki was P8, as you mentioned, Shaker, and the only Red Bull to survive, the only Red Bull power unit to survive the race, which is pretty insane when you think of things. And Gasly's failure was pretty remarkable. With you see all that fire as he's jumping out and having to jump out of the car and not touch the car at the same time because the car was, of course, yellow. Due to what looked like an electronics failure is what I thought it was, as everything just shut off really quickly. So for that would mean it was the same issue with Max's and Sergio's car, but I don't know, something to be worried about in the Red Bull powertrain department to have 3 out of the 4 cars that you guys or that they serve fail.
I do believe Perez's was the engine as well, because as soon as he had the spin out, he said it was his engine. He couldn't get any power. So the spin out happened because he couldn't get any power power from his engine.
Rear locks up.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Yeah. So what the issue was on Gasly's side? So the 2 Red Bulls had exactly the same issue, but Gasly actually was an MGUK failure. So separate from the senior Red Bull team, but a concern nonetheless, because like you guys touched on, this was the first race with officially Red Bull powertrains. Of course, Honda's still pretty involved in this year's engine. They've got a lot of people from Honda still working with Red Bull this year. But regardless, it is a badged Red Bull powertrain. Now, the issue with the 2 Red Bulls was that basically with this new E10 fuel this year, they noticed a lot of the teams during testing that once the tank gets pretty low and the cars are on low fuel, it has a tendency to basically just shut off because there isn't enough fuel going into the tank. I'm giving kind of just a basic explanation of it. There's obviously a lot more detail that you can find from people who understand that side of the things a lot more than us, but that is essentially what happened. And very interesting, though, because allegedly Red Bull didn't do too many low fuel testing in the 6 days of running, so they didn't encounter that issue as much as other teams have. So it doesn't seem like a major issue at the moment, but still, as Verstappen said, shouldn't really be happening at this point in the season, and definitely a concern, I think. And then just had another really weird one that maybe concerns me more than the engine was his steering issue, which came from a track rod damage from when they dropped the car in the pit stops off of the jacks. And that's kind of a big concern to me, because with the stiffer suspensions this year, what's going to happen when we go to some of these circuits with really harsh curbing, like Imola, for example, that's coming soon, maybe a Monza later down the road with some of those bollards off track. Very interesting that it would damage the car that much just from dropping it on the jack.
Yeah, I'm not sure how quickly it is to redevelop a track rod to fit the car. I'm not an engineer. I don't know exactly how long that would take to redevelop and find a better solution to that track rod issue. But you're right, definitely a major concern, Chris. And you also have to remember they only get 3 power units for the entire season. They've used 1 in race 1. So you got to go 22 races on 2 power units if you don't take penalties, which of course definitely won't happen. They're going to have to take penalties at some point throughout the season. So, I mean, that's something to keep in consideration as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the penalties are as big of a concern for Red Bull this year after, having a world championship winner. They obviously got more sponsorship money, but yeah, it's definitely, like you said, with the first race and the first power unit out, and obviously with Gasly and his MGUK out as well, they're going to have to worry about that as well. It is a concern, but I believe Crofty did comment, we don't know how long a lot of these cars are going to last in a race because it obviously hasn't been tested. And I think we have some races that are almost set, 71 laps, more than 70 laps. So it's going to be interesting to see how they perform in that too. And it seems like it's only Ferrari that has it all figured out really with the entire unit. So.
They really do. 5 of the 6 Ferrari-powered cars score points. Mick Schumacher was the only one who wasn't able to score points. And it's also interesting, too, that the Ferraris weren't really topping the speed traps. When you look at the breakdowns from the Bahrain Grand Prix, they weren't even the top 5 of the biggest speed. So it looks like Red Bull had a slight advantage on certain parts of the straights, but I do believe that the Ferrari engine is the best so far this year, and they have made the biggest leap out of any of the engine manufacturers. And I think Honda maybe taking a little bit of a step back. So reliability, obviously a big concern for Red Bull in a few days' time once we go racing in Saudi Arabia. But just championship-wise, I know this is only race 1 of 23, but I mean, that's probably one of the worst championship defenses ever, to start a season with a double DNF for the team, DNF for Max as well. Obviously not over. There's plenty of room to go, but I just think that in a season in which Ferrari look very strong, this is a terrible way to start the year, and they're going to need to have a lot of good performances to try and cut that 25-point gap.
It is, but I mean, Charles is going to have a DNF at some point this season, and so will Carlos. It's bound to happen, whether it's a crash or a mechanical issue. You're bound to have a DNF, unless you're Lewis Hamilton, who just apparently doesn't get DNFs ever. But for the most part, one of them is going to have one this season. So there is also that for Red Bull. Of course, you want you don't want those DNFs to happen at the start of the season, because they're more likely to happen throughout the season as well. But something to not worry about with 22 races left. I think it's still obviously very early in the championship. Anything can happen. We know F1. We saw it coming down the last lap last year. So who knows what will happen this year as well.
Yeah, and from what it sounds like, from what Chris mentioned with the issues, that those issues aren't huge. Those are issues that they can manage very easily. If it's just a fuel issue of it not going enough to the engine, like you explained in layman's terms. But it does. It seems like those issues they can handle right away and get on top of. But yeah, it still shouldn't happen in the first race with 3 out of 4 Red Bulls.
Yeah, certainly not the way they would have liked to start the season, but anyways, it helped a lot of other drivers and teams with that late double DNF, but Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, and Ferrari are back. It's great to see Ferrari back at the front of Formula One, and just a side note, too, to wrap up Ferrari conversation, fantastic to hear the Italian anthem. It's been over 2 years since we've heard it on the podium, so awesome to see Ferrari doing well, and congratulations to the Tifosi and all the loyal Ferrari supporters, as you guys deserve some success now after quite a while. So then moving on further down into the rest of the grid, a couple of the drivers and teams who benefited from that late double DNF was possibly the driver of the weekend or the team of the weekend, and that's Kevin Magnussen and Haas, who had an absolute dream return to Formula One, P5 in his first race back. And quite frankly, even if the Red Bulls would have finished line of stern, his P7 still would have been as impressive, because he was the best of the rest. When you look at it after the Mercedes, the Ferrari, the Red Bull, they were the best of the rest. And it really wasn't like Kevin Magnussen was coming under huge pressure behind him, had great pace all race long. And like you said, Tyler, in our live stream, you said it was just a couple of things happen at the front. You never know. He could grab a podium. He was pretty close.
He was pretty close. And with the Mercedes and all their porpoising issues, I mean, I didn't know at this. I thought maybe he could have grabbed one if Lewis or George Russell in 3rd and 4th at the time had any sort of issues with their cars as well, with all the bumps and craziness that they've been going through recently, which they look to see that they may improve in races down the line. But I mean, unbelievable by K-Mag. I was so happy to see him do well. I listened to the post-race radio, and it's just like pure joy from K-Mag and Haas. And Good Designer had the biggest smile in the world. I don't think I've seen him smile that big since K-Mag's last crazy finish, where he finished 5th place. So awesome for Haas. It was so good to see them. I wish Mick Schumacher got points. That was the only thing that was missing from this Grand Prix, in my opinion. It would have been awesome to see him get his first points in F1, but unfortunately that contact with Esteban Ocon damaged his rear end a little bit, and he had a tough time with pace and rear stability for the rest of the race. But going, like I mentioned in their preseason podcast, going from a beach in Miami on vacation with your family and to an F1 grid and now to 5th place in a Bahrain Grand Prix. What a phenomenal story for K-Mag, and I hope it can continue in Saudi Arabia. And of course, we've seen Saudi Arabia last year. Who knows what the heck's going to happen at that racetrack? So it's all up for K-Mag in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can be upset or disappointed with how Kevin Magnussen's story unfolded. Being out of F1 for a year. And I think everyone was upset with him leaving, and hoped that he would find a team to drive in 2021. But just so happy for him to come back. And like you said, Tyler, just throughout the radio, you can hear it all in the team. They were all so happy for Kevin Magnussen, even Mick Schumacher. Getting P11, not bad after how he did last year. And I think he was dealing with a little bit of a difficult car, from what I heard from the team radio. And as always, I always forget the guy that comes on the radio what his name is.
Gary.
Always sounds so. Sorry,
Gary,
yeah. Oh, Gary always just sounds so great on the radio. So, we're gonna do our homework this week and come back. It's
okay,
it's really
Mick.
nice.
Okay, Mick. Good race, buddy. No, it is pretty cool.
And they were competing with Alonso and racing against the McLaren. So not bad. From where they were in the last few years, not bad for Mick Schumacher.
it really wasn't a terrible race from him. Had he not had the damage from the spin caused by Ocon, maybe he would have been able to grab a point here or there. But Magnussen was just absolutely stellar. And, besides from the driver, of course, extracting the most out of the car, I think what we really see from the first race, and I know it's kind of difficult to tell because Bahrain is a different track to the couple of the ones that we're going to next, but regardless, it is a slight indication of the running order. I think we could genuinely see Haas and Alfa Romeo be at the front end of the midfield this season, because Alfa Romeo had a fantastic race as well with Bottas in P6, really recovered from that first lap awful start that he had, too much wheel spin off of the grid. I think he jumped down to like P16 or 14 at one time. And then his teammate as well, the rookie Guan Yu Zhou, had a fantastic, really solid race as well. I was impressed by him just to get that final point. But I really think that those two teams, they're sitting third and fourth in the Constructors' Championship right now, but they could be the ones fighting it out for best of the rest in 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. And Valtteri, good for him. A really good comeback race, considering, like you mentioned, Chris, cooking the rear tires on the start of the race. We've seen that before in a different car for a few seasons past. And, dropping back to bottom quarter of the grid and coming back for P6 was a phenomenal for him. And Zhao Guanyu, I think is what Crofty was calling. I think that's what he's going by this season. Was really impressed me throughout this weekend. I thought he was very composed, and he was a driver who I thought was brought up properly through F2. He could have been brought up last year, but I think another year of development F2 was good for him, and it really came in as a mature, composed driver in this race weekend. I was very impressed with him, and it might be a really good pickup for Alfa Romeo. And we'll see how he does throughout the season. Of course, Yuki Tsunoda got out to a very hot start last year and kind of cooled off throughout the season. And it's different with every driver. So it'll be interesting to see how Zhou Guanyu does throughout the season. But awesome for Alfa Romeo, who have made me eat my words through race number 1 this year.
All three of us picked them to be 10th this year. So.
I agree. I think Alfa Romeo was honestly, out of all the teams that we saw this weekend, they were the team I was most impressed by, because I was not expecting either teams to be in the top 10 positions. Very good from Valtteri Bottas, and you could see why he was put in that Mercedes seat for so long, and he really brought out the best of that car. And very happy to see him still in the top 10 and not at all what I was expecting him to be this season. So, very happy for Valtteri as well. And like you guys mentioned, is it Zhao or Zhou? Because they kept on saying Zhou and they switched from Zhao, so I'm not too sure. So whichever way be, you can comment and let us know. How it's.
I believe it's Zhou, but it could. Yeah. I've heard Zhao as well too.
Yeah, we should try to get pronunciation confirmation from Alfa Romeo. It'd actually be really helpful just to make sure I don't want to pronounce his name wrong.
Yeah.
No, exactly. That's why I'm saying both. Let us know which one.
Yeah, well, he's a rookie, so you can forgive us. We're still getting accustomed to him and getting to know him as well. But yeah, like you mentioned, Tyler, it's customary in China and also in certain European countries as well, where you go last name, first name, so family name, and then first name. So it's different than here. So we've kind of, I guess, westernized it, but we can definitely go with Zhou Guanyu for the rest of this season, just maybe if some people were a little bit confused about that. But very good rookie debut for him, so I'm really looking forward to him. I like his attitude, super emotional on the team radio as well, was crying afterwards and stuff. So He seems like a really good guy and a pretty solid driver, so good pickup for Alfa Romeo. I'm happy to be wrong, too, with my preseason predictions, but some of the teams hoping that our predictions are going to be right is McLaren and Aston Martin, because I think all three of us tipped them to be at least in the top 5 this season, if not top 6. But boy, they had an awful, awful Bahrain Grand Prix. You had McLaren pretty much running at the back of the field for the entire race. Aston Martin, they were a little bit better with Lance Stroll finishing in 12th, a little bit lucky with all the events that happened. But man, I mean, you got to hope if you're a McLaren fan that this pace isn't going to be what they see the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, I don't know what's going on with McLaren, because they had a great first testing session, looked okay in the second testing session. Obviously, Daniel Ricciardo didn't have many laps due to getting COVID. So it was just Lando Norris back behind the car for that. But out of nowhere, it almost seemed like they just, I don't know, they looked like a rock got tied to them and they got thrown into a lake and they just sunk. I don't know what was going on with that McLaren, and it's really disappointing to see, because I had them up there as, you know, one of the favorites for at least a couple of race wins this season. Now for Aston Martin, I think their problems are a little bit more publicly known. I think they've said that. Of course, the major porpoising issues with the Aston Martin, and they said that they have had to raise the ride height so high to avoid those. They're losing 0.75 of a second a lap. Jeez. Which they said this, and if that goes, if you take that into your qualifying, they're top in the, you know, both drivers are in the top 10. So that's a major loss of time due to the ride height, trying to avoid that porpoising issue. So if they can get that figured out, I mean, Aston Martin could have a really, really quick car in the last 3/4 of the season or the last half of the season, who knows? But for right now, they really have to try and hammer out what exactly is causing that major porpoising, that they can't lower the ride height to where they can get optimal downforce with that underfloor vane system that they'll be using for the underfloor ground effect.
Yeah, they just, I don't know. They were Daniel Ricciardo. I don't know if you guys listen to his team radio. He just had no words to say at the end of that race, and I'm pretty much at the same spot. I don't really know what to say about McLaren this year. You know, after the huge developments we saw with Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz the last few years, and for them to be at this place where they are now, I was expecting a lot more. Same with Aston Martin as well. But, you know, not a bad performance from Aston Martin. They're kind of where I expected them to be. Yeah, they could be like maybe a couple of places higher, but not too bad overall from Stroll, in my opinion. And, you know, not the greatest from Vettel, obviously. But, yeah, from Stroll, not too bad to get P12 in the end. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about those two teams.
Yeah, it's going to be a couple of races too before some new developments come on the car. So I think Lando Norris at McLaren was saying it's going to be enough. It's going to be a rough couple of races for them. But yeah, I hope that Bahrain is sort of an outlier. But still, it doesn't look good, because if you have a good car, you're going to be good everywhere. So yeah, that definitely did surprise me. So we'll see what happens the rest of the year. So the final team that we'll touch on before we get into just our final thoughts on the Bahrain Grand Prix is Mercedes, because really a big, not necessarily a shock, but I guess just in recent terms in Formula One era, a shock just to see them so far off of the race pace and just really in 5th and 6th for most of the race before, of course, the Red Bull failures, which popped Lewis Hamilton up into the podium places. But I was listening to some comments from Toto Wolff post-race saying that in race pace, they're about 0.8 of a second off of what the Ferraris are doing, and it's mainly down to the fact that they've got some porpoising issues as well, but they really have a draggy car, and they're just not able to get the same performance out of it. Hamilton and Russell, the drivers, they're just not able to get as much confidence into corner entry as well, and at the exit of corners to really attack. And so they were really, I think at one point, 37 seconds behind the race leader, Charles Leclerc. So, Tyler, just some comments on Mercedes and you know what you think that this will mean. Will they be able to get into the title fight and make it a 3-way battle for the championship?
Well, you're looking at 8-time defending constructors champion, so I wouldn't count them out. Lewis touched on this at the end of the race, and I thought that was a really good point. That they're probably the team that has the best teamwork and team atmosphere in the entire F1 grid. And if anyone can figure out this issue and come back from it, it is Mercedes. So I wouldn't chalk them out of race wins this season. However, I don't think they're going to be title favorites or title contenders this season. I just think it might be a little bit too much for them to overcome by the time they figure out that porpoising issue and fix it in time. Same with Aston Martin. It might be in the last 3 quarters of the season or in the last half of the season, and that won't be enough time to win the constructors title. Although, I think they will be winning races this season, and I think they will come back from whatever major issue that they have. This is a team that invests a lot of money into the team, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and there's a lot of passion behind this Mercedes team. And they've shown over years and years how well of a team they are and how much innovation they can put into that Mercedes car. So I wouldn't panic if you're a Mercedes fan yet, but I also wouldn't be very confident as well. I'd be cautiously optimistic into what would be coming in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there is like a time frame for when they can figure it out. If they figure it out just before the halfway point of the season, we get to about 11, 12 races. I think that's enough time for Mercedes to try and crawl back if they do manage to figure their car out enough. But I think if we go into the summer break, I think and they come back and figure it out, I think it'll be a little bit too late for Mercedes as well to I think they'll still end up getting top three. Probably third. I think it's a little bit difficult. They don't look like they're in the greatest spot, but we know Lewis Hamilton, and he'll bring out the best in the car. And having George Russell having Lewis Hamilton in that seat is really going to help him out and develop for the rest of his life. So they're in a great position at the moment with their drivers, and we'll see how it goes because they still managed to get third and fourth in the end, so we can't take that away from them.
Yeah, somehow Lewis Hamilton squeaks away another podium. Like it's crazy that obviously they weren't expecting that, but Lewis Hamilton has another podium. He's 1-0 against Max Verstappen in podiums this season, and I don't think anyone saw that coming. So it's just wild to see. After all the things that are going wrong for Mercedes and for Lewis, that he somehow still comes out with a podium and a trophy.
Yeah, kind of typical. Sorry, go ahead, Shaker.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say kind of just typical of Lewis Hamilton's career, right place at the right time, seems like for most of it, but some people were highlighting this too, and I think it is a little bit right that what we saw at the Bahrain Grand Prix was, Formula One karmic justice at work once again from what happened in Abu Dhabi, right? With the safety car coming out and Max Verstappen benefiting from a miracle and some huge luck. And then we go into this first race of the season, some terrible luck this time for Max Verstappen in Red Bull, which sees him DNF from the race. Lewis Hamilton gets on the podium. So it's a little bit of karmic justice like it was last year with Max having all the bad luck and then he gets finally the good fortune. So it's funny how it works out that way. But yeah, it's nice to see a little bit of a difference in terms of the shakeup to see Mercedes struggle for once and then Ferrari, a team back up in resurgence. But yeah, hopefully it will be a 3-team fight for the championship this year. Before we go, one team that we did want to mention, Shaker, I know you wanted to talk about them, was the boys in pink for just a few more races at least, and that's Alpine, who I want to say did surprise me a lot, especially Esteban Ocon. Had the 5-second penalty and yet still finished in 7th and ahead of his teammate.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on them because they're I think 4th or 5th in my predictions for the end of the season. So I honestly, that's one of my dark horse predictions, but I was very surprised with Esteban Ocon this weekend getting that 5-second penalty in the first lap. Who knows if he didn't get that, where he could have been in that race, but to scrape out P8 in the end, P7? Yeah, P7 in the end with Alonso getting P9 is a great spot for them because I don't think Alonso looked very racy this weekend, but just to get points in the end for both teams and to kind of be there because I think we weren't expecting the most out of them, but to still get points in the end is great for them because that's 4 teams that managed to actually get double points finishes. They're out of the 4.
Yeah,
Mercedes,
you're right.
Ferrari. Yeah, so
Yep.
not bad.
Yeah, no, really cool. And as you mentioned, I'm not sure, did Ocon serve that 5-second penalty in the pits?
Yeah, I think he did because
Okay.
they didn't really touch on it during the broadcast, but he had to, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's what I thought. Because I was just looking at the final standings in the time, and if you were to add 5 seconds to Esteban's time, it would have put him in P5 ahead of Kevin Magnussen by 0.3 of a second. But of course, if he served it during a pit stop, then that kind of doesn't really factor because there would have been a safety car. Anyways, who knows? But if you're going just by time, it would have put him in P5. So, phenomenal by Alpine. I had them ninth in my standings in my predictions for this year, and they definitely don't look like a ninth place constructors team. They look really, really good. They surprised me this weekend, and I'm excited to see what they do. I just hope Fernando can get a little bit of muscle behind his car because, Esteban seems to have a good handle on that Alpine, but Fernando surprisingly is just struggling a little bit. I won't say a lot, obviously, because he finished in the points and had a really good race. But he just didn't seem as confident in the car as Esteban did.
Yeah, it kind of happened last year too. We had a slow start to the year, but that was when he was coming back into the sport after a few years off. So I don't know if it was just maybe something setup wise. I think even Verstappen was talking about that a little bit, that the balance changed from Friday to Sunday and that it was kind of more difficult to drive. So a little bit of an adjustment period, but I think Esteban Ocon will be very, very happy with himself and how he started this year, as will Alpine, because I think that they have an opportunity, like Shaker made in his predictions, to potentially finish in the top 5 if what we see from other teams like McLaren and Aston Martin are true for the rest of the year. So well done to them, and well done to all the drivers, really, who had a very clean race to start the Bahrain Grand Prix. We were so close to getting the first opening race, I think, ever to have all 20 drivers finish. So it was a really solid race, and I think a very good start to the year. I think it's nice to see that the rule changes really are doing what they were designed to do. Of course, the verdict is still out on the whole regulation changes as we go to some different circuits. We're heading to a very high-speed track next with not a lot of braking events, and then we go to some more traditional European circuits like Imola, and then we got street tracks. So by mid-season, we'll be able to tell. But I think overall, I really enjoyed it, and I think that I'm really excited for this season, and it's just so great to have F1 back.
Yeah, it really is. And for now, it seems like these cars can follow each other. We had some really, really good racing. Although there was a lull kind of midway through this race, if you actually looked at the race, there were still some really good on-track battles that we didn't see last year. So, fingers crossed. It seems like a great start for this new F1 car, a new design, and hope it continue for the rest of the season.
Yeah, very good to start the race. And one thing I did want to mention about the rule changes, and I think it was mentioned by Crofty in the race as well, is on that safety car restart compared to last few years where we saw the huge difference between the top 3 cars and the rest of the grid. It seemed like they were very, consistently spread out throughout, and they could still have some wheel-to-wheel racing compared to the last few years where the gap would be within 5 to 10 seconds. Within a lap or two, so that was really nice to see as well. So I'm expecting to see a lot more of that close wheel-to-wheel racing. And, like Tyler mentioned, it might not be all that impressive and go all that long, but it's just really nice to see that again within all the cars, not just between Mercedes and Red Bull or Ferrari.
Yeah, I think we might get plenty of surprises coming our way this season. And now the first doubleheader of the year is coming up in a few days' time. By the time this podcast gets out, we'll be racing around the Jeddah circuit. We really weren't there that long ago, just a few months in December for the first ever Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So this will be the second one. Very interesting track if last year's race was anything to go by. So we really hope that you guys will be able to join us this Saturday for our Saudi Arabian Grand Prix qualifying live stream watch along. You should be able to find the link for that video on the homepage of our channel. We'll get that posted up very shortly. Hopefully all 3 of us will be able to join for that live stream, but you're definitely going to get at the minimum 2 of us this Saturday. So we're really hoping that many of you can join us. And of course, the live chat will be wide open to interact with us, ask your questions, make your comments, and have your voice heard on our channel. So that should wrap up episode number 128 of the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast. Thank you guys once again for listening and watching us wherever you are, watching us around the world. We really appreciate your support. You'll be able to find all of our social media links down in the description below, whether on YouTube or on your podcast player app. and just make sure you follow us there. We really use our social media to just try and post updates on content and things like that. And if you got a question to us, reach out to us directly and we'll be happy to answer. Tyler, Shaker, any final thoughts or words? Now's your chance.
Bring on the Jeddah Street Circuit. It was chaos last year, and I'm sure it's going to be chaos again this year.
Yeah, I kind of agree with new wheels and everything, and will be really interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun if anything was to go by for the 2021 race. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that one for sure. So we'll be back next week to break down that race as well, and then we'll have 2 weeks off before we go to Australia for the third race of the year. So a very rapid start to the 2022 season, but I think a excellent start in that one. So please comment your race thoughts down below, and of course make any comments or questions on anything you heard in this podcast, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. For Tyler McDonald, Shaker Barty, I've been Chris Cato. Thank you guys again so much for the support. You'll be hearing from me again soon. Bye, guys.